Okay, good morning to all of you. Welcome to MAT181 Research in Mathematics, a course offered by LD Woosley, Bethany College. Welcome. Welcome everyone. These are week 6. So far we have our World Mission Conference last week. So it's an academic break for all of our students at LD, but now we are continuing. Yan po. Okay, we are continuing our discussion. I know Dale is a little bit busy, my student. Nevertheless, that magkaroon na ng output within midterms, there will be, or prelim, perhaps chapter 2, then chapters 1 and 3 for midterms, and then eventually for finals ay yung full-blown research. But for the sake of our discussion, we will continue. Tayo po ay magpapatuloy sa ating pagtalakay regarding our we're now on this aspect of instrumentation. All right. Hopefully Dale would catch up. Yeah, so this will be a brief meeting if my student will not come in. Then later on, we will have a course in problem solving. All right. So let me check myself. All right. So I'm just checking myself on our YouTube. Yeah, may ads siya. Sayang din yung ads. So we are continuing now. The requirement for this course is to answer the first 2 modules. Dale, if you are gonna watch, you are required to do so. So it's as indicated on our classroom, and as we have discussed also last time. As part of your prelim requirement, as specified here, so we'll have the submission of modules 1 and 2, as well as that will be deadline February 26, and also the required draft for chapter 2. Yeah. All right, so let me have a cup of coffee first. Kape ulit tayo. Yeah, so that would be our requirement. In fact, all other courses has their specific requirements here. Yan, so yan, dami, no? At least 3. Yan, daming requirement. Kasi nga, yan, so modules, etc. So prelim exam, including all courses. Now I have 7 courses here, so everyone has a prelim requirement as well, except for 181 doesn't have any prelim examination, but just a mere submission. Yun, saglit lang I'll just view myself here. Including all courses. Now, I have 7 courses here, so everyone has a prelim. All right. So we're now continuing. It's good thing my audio is clear. My network is also okay as of this time. So I'm just using my broadband because our fiber connection is down since yesterday. Okay, acknowledging one top chat. Yung background viewer natin, pakilala ka nga dyan. Yan, welcome sa iyo kapatid, background viewer number 1. Yan. Yan sa ating top chat. Hindi ko alam, baka sarili ko rin lang yun. Baka nga. Alright. Let's open first a word of prayer, then we'll continue on our discussion. This will be a brief discussion. If my student will not go up, I will just continue on this lecture until, because the issue on research is not lecturing, but of course, this will be the basis of their output. They will be submitting parts and parcel of the research paper, or for this case, a research proposal. and my student is now on his way of writing chapter 2 because of the related literature and study, then that would be his input for lecture or chapter 1. Doon niya susundin niya na yun. And then chapter 3, the methods of research or methodology, research methodology. That will compose of a research proposal. Then afterwards, if everything would be fine, I will approve also his instrument. That's where data collection instruments come in for him to gather data. All right, so that will be used for his chapters 4 and 5, and that would be a full-blown research. All right. Sige, let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the time, for this week number 6 of MAT181. I pray, Lord, for your mercy and grace to sustain us. Even Dale, he has some ministerial activity. I pray, Lord, for your grace, sufficiency, that he may learn also even in a record version in YouTube, that you will also guide Dale as he continue on writing his chapter 2 as required for the prelim and answering the first 2 modules that had been provided. We thank you, Lord. It's our prayer in Christ's name. Amen. All right. So we'll just have a rundown of data collection instruments should be clearly identified and described. In fact, this would sum up your problem. No? Whatever your problem, it should be reflected in the instrument that you will be using. And of course, that will be specified on the statement of problem. No? On the statement of problem, each of the items that will be found in this instrument will be part and parcel of your statement of the problem. So wala tayong itatanong na hindi kasama dun sa statement of the problem sa chapter 1. Alright? So yun yung makikita natin dyan. It should be clearly identified and described. No? So normally in a standardized test, no, since this had been used in a national level or perhaps regional level, you may adopt instruments used in as a standardized test for the national and regional level for a specific locale that you are doing some research. Scoring procedures and range of possible scores on the instrument should be included. No, in range of scores, for instance, sa scale of 1 to 5. No, so that maliwanag yun. No, dapat meron siyang, and then the description. For instance, excellent, very good, good, ganon, moderate. No? So there is a description for each of the points or the corresponding range of scores, possible scores for your instrument should be included as well. Then later on, we will try to look into a particular undergrad thesis as far as a matter of example for this instrument. It must be valid, reliable, sensitive, and specific. So there is validity and reliability, sensitivity. Later on, we will be much defining this. No? Okay, it must be valid. There must be certain degree of validity coming from a standardized instrument as well. It's reliable, the reliability, sensitive, and specific as well. So these are part and parcel of an instrument. Pilot study results should be included for any new developed and revised instrument. So pilot study results. No? Sometimes we need to pilot a study, and from that we could make use of developing a newly developed instrument or perhaps a revision of that instrument. Then standardized versus research constructed. No? So yes, we could make use of standardized instrument, and we could make use also of research constructed. No? That will undergo some process of validity and reliability. tools in generating data. No? So there are tools. Of course, observation is one. We could generate. And through questionnaire, no? Normally in a quantitative research, no, we are also doing some questionnaire. Same as true with qualitative research. So questionnaire to gather information to generate data. Then interviews, no? We could also interviews like a focal person or point person, where we could generate data from an expert interviews from expert persons or focal persons as well. Then of course a test, standardized test. Normally we could generate data, perhaps an aptitude test, periodic test. No? So these are tests where we could generate data as well. Now we go now to validity. Validity of instrument concern is ability to gather the data that is intended to gather. So magiging valid siya kapag yung nais mong data ay masasagot o makukuha mo mula dun sa instrumento na yon. Yun yung validity niya. That would make it valid. Yan. So the greater the validity of an instrument, the more confidence you have that the instrument will obtain the data. That's what I'm saying. That will answer the research question or the test, the research, and to test the research hypothesis. So, ayan. So far, we have discussed that on a previous discussion of testing of hypothesis. So, kasama yan. Kasama yan doon sa i-gather nating data through this instrument. Now, there are types of validity. We have the PACE, content, criterion, construct, internal, and external validity. So, perhaps we could dig in one by one. Nawala na. Yun. Pag sinabi nating PACE validity, no? I don't know if Dale would pop up somewhere here. No? Nevertheless, I will continue. And this will be a short lecture if my student will not come in, though he has permissions. Sayang lang talaga no, kung meron sigurong ibang point person. The fact that you're enrolled in a school, no, so mahirap din talaga minsan pagbalansehin yung being absent. It's good thing that though hindi rin talaga dapat, it's not the normal way that most of the time you're excused in the lectures at yung normal iko-konti yung attendance. So hindi ganun dapat, even in a Bible college or a Baptist college like LD Woosley, sometimes hindi siya nagiging advantage. No, dapat, sabi ko nga sa mga estudyante sa ibang klase, pag hindi man lang talagang equally equivalent or mahigit pa, wag na kayong umabsent sa klase. The fact that you are enrolled, meaning you agree to the rules of the school, and therefore, as much as possible, you attend classes. Although we have ministry considerations, yun nga yung ano natin, minsan yan yung nagiging, but of course, we need to learn to balance things. And perhaps if there are opportunities where we could tap other point person in the ministry, why not? You learn to delegate these things. No? Para tayo mag-focus. Kasi nga, what's the use of enrolling in a college if you're not attending either online or on the actual classroom? No, that's the point na dapat natin consider. So it's a good thing that we are on online. How much more with the face-to-face classroom? No? Pag pupunta ba ako sa Bethany, wala akong estudyante doon. Di sayang lang yung pamasahe. No? Though hindi naman issue talaga yung pamasahe. Sayang din yung effort. No? Na ang professor hanggat maaari present. Though meron din siyang katungkulan. May mga ministeryo din siya. Most of us are ministers, pastors. As for me, as a preacher and a deacon of the church, no, so we have our responsibilities. Also a family man, no, but we don't want to be absent on our own class, no. Dapat ganun din yung mga estudyante. Okay? So Dale, I hope you understand that. As much possible, dapat ganun. para siyang nagiging ano lang talaga, nagiging optional in a sense yung pagdalo ng mga bata. So as much possible kung ikaw ay nag-enroll sa isang paaralan, that's the normal sense. The normal sense. Yun lang. Minsan nagkakaroon ng regularity, yung dating optional, yun ang nagiging regular na nangyayari. At yung pag-attend sa klase ay nagiging optional. So yun ang nakakalungkot dyan. How much more with the face-to-face? Imagine a professor would be undergoing traffic in Metro Manila, then realizing as soon as he arrived at the school, no students came in. So that's a probable scenario if we will go back to our face-to-face class, wherein the students was not able to attend classes because of several reasons, maybe valid or invalid or whatsoever. So anyway, so it should measure the supposed measuring what is supposed to measure. For instance, measuring, later on we will look at a particular instrument of an undergrad thesis care of PUP Taguig, no? So titingnan natin siya maya to conceptualize the idea. And then of course, this space validity, it can be examined through the use of experts in the content area, through the use of people who have characteristics similar to those of the potential subjects. So yung expert, no, you may have the expert opinion regarding the content, no, as far as its space validity is concerned. And then, of course, we may not use this because it's subjective, really used alone. It must be a combination of something else, not just on the surface, kaya nga space validity siya, but of course, yes, expert opinion and then other criteria that we will be utilizing to validate the instrument. Now, another sense of validity is content, not just the pace, but the content. Now, it is concerned with the scope or range of items used to measure a variable. So, yung content per se. Inaalam natin one by one, yung mga questionnaire, saan ba tumutukoy yan doon sa statement of the problem mo. Dapat magkaroon ng one-to-one correspondence yan. Kung anong dineclare mo as your statement of the problem, plus the testing of hypothesis included, it must be reflected on the content of your instrument. No? So yun yung makikita natin doon. And then, yan, dami, no? Methods, comparing the content of the instrument with the variable available literature on the topic. Yan, so there are methodologies where we could validate the content, or panel of experts. It's not just one or two, no, it could be a panel of 3, developing a test blueprint designed around the objectives of the content. So we could do this, no? So, but of course, with the panel of experts also. So that's for the content. And then criterion validity, it's a concern with the extent to which an instrument corresponds to or it's correlated with some criterion measurement of the variable of interest. No, yung criteria. Yung criteria naman nung more specific tong criterion validity na to. More specific siya. It assesses the ability of an instrument to determine subjects' responses at the present or predict subjects' responses in the future. So there is the predictability as far as the variable is concerned. A variable of interest, measuring the variable of interest. Does the instrument under consideration correlate with another instrument that measures the same behavior or responses? So yun yung mga tanong natin dyan. It could be a concurrent versus predictive. Ayan. So concurrent on the particular present time, or predictive, it could predict a future behavior of those people that would answer the same instrument. Now, with the concurrent validity compares an instrument's ability to obtain a measurement of subject's behavior that is comparable to some other criterion of the behavior. So may concurrent validity siya, no? Doon sa, kasi normally mga multiple variable tayo, multiple variables, kino-compare natin yung other, mamaya titingnan natin yung specific na, meron tayong specific instrument dito na titingnan. Predictive is concerned with the ability of an instrument to predict behavior responses of the subject in the future naman. Yung concurrent with corresponding on the present time in relation or comparable to other some criterion. Predictive is responses or behavior in the future. No, yun yung makikita nating definition niyan. Construct validity. It is the degree to which an instrument measures the construct it is supposed to measure. Construct is a concept or abstraction created or constructed by the researcher. So yung imagery, normally nadidefine natin to in terms of your conceptual framework. Yung conceptual framework mo, doon pumapasok yun. The most difficult to measure, known group procedure, factor analysis. No? So we may skip on that as well. Internal validity, this is the extent to which we can be sure of the accuracy and correctness of the findings of the study. Internal. This refers to how accurate the results are within itself or eternally. Accuracy in itself. Now, 6 threats to internal validity. Yan, selection bias, no? Changes in the dependent variable due to subject differences and not the experimental treatment. So yan yung mga biases. History. So perhaps maybe we could I just have a rundown of this. Maturation, testing in itself, the influence of pretest and knowledge of baseline data affects the post-test score. Yan. Instrumentation change, instrument inaccuracy or judging influences of pretest or post-test scores. Mortality, attrition or dropout. So nangyayari din yan. Nawawala yung mga sinisurvey mo afterwards. Perhaps in a pretest and a post-test. Mortality. Now, the external validity is the extent to which the result of a study can be applied to other groups or situation. That's the external validity. It refers to how accurately the study provides knowledge that can be applied outside the study itself. So sometimes we adapt this instrument for other situation or context. Now, the Hawthorne effect, study participants respond in a certain manner, not based on the experimental treatment, but because they are aware that they are being observed. Okay, may mga ganung situation. No? Hindi yan talagang actual na respond kasi meron kang idea na ino-observe ka kaya dapat maging pogi points yung sagot mo. So ganoon, no? Double blind experiment. Experimenter effect, researcher characteristic or behavior influence subject behavior. So ayan, so because of the researcher itself, no? So may ganung epekto. Procental effects, interviewer characteristic of behavior influence respondent's answer as well. Reactive effects of the pretest subject are synthesized to the experimental treatment through taking the pretest. So reactive. Placebo effect, that's a major threat to external validity, is a psychological response to the treatment. Phenomena whereby patient, so perhaps this more on health sciences, so yan yung external validity niya. So we may not now validity and reliability naman tayo. Concerns with the consistency and stability. Degree of reliability is usually determined between two sets of scores or between the ratings of two judges. Yan. So between this range of scores, -1 to 1, reliability normally, in terms of correlation, this would be the verbal descriptions of if we're looking into correlation studies. So meaning we have for 0.9 to 1, a very, very high, strong negative correlation. Strong positive or negative correlation, I would say. Okay, so retest stability, reliability. When a test is given to same samples on 2 different occasions, and these 2 tests shows a high degree of correlation. Yan. So yung reliability. So different, the same samples in 2 different occasions. So stability over time. Yan yun. No? And then inter-rater reliability, comparison of raters or observers rating using the same instruments. That could be also intra-rater, this type of reliability assessment in which the same assessment is completed by the same rater on 2 or more occasions. So intra. So minsan nangyayari yan, no, kapag on different occasion, no, you will answer the same instrument, and then that would correspond to reliability, whether same rater on 2 or more occasions. Intra-rater yon. Raters observer using the same instrument. Yun namang inter-rater, 2 or more observers of the same instrument. Yun namang intra, it's same rater on 2 or more occasions. So, yun yung reliability niya. Yan, no, the split hop reliability, most popular set of reliability, single administration of tests, test split into hubs, and scores scored separately, correlation is computed. Yeah, normally yung depende dun sa sa pag-administer ng test. Of course, we have test item analysis using Cooder and Richardson. Okay, so perhaps we could look into sample test instruments. We could make use of sample test instrument. Siguro afterwards sa itong research design natin. So I will be trying to look into a particular test instrument of an undergrad thesis. Yeah, undergrad research. Okay, I will just pull down the test instrument here. Yan, hindi ko makita. Dali lang guys ha. Okay, this is the research instrument use. Tingnan natin yung kanyang no. So dapat magkaroon correspondence yung statement of the problem saka yung hypothesis testing dito, no? Saka gagamiting research instrument. Yan. So balikan muna natin yung kanyang title. Tingnan natin, let's observe no whether by the way, I acknowledge, attribute the authors of this undergrad thesis presented by. Ayan, so acknowledge natin. So this is not mine, definitely. So I got this only from a website available. Presented the College of Education of PUP Taguig. Ayan, so proud PUP yan here. So they are listed here is the authors and of course their advisor as well. So yung title nila, Analysis of Factors Affecting the Academic Performance in Mathematics of BSED Math Students of the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, Taguig during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think this is a very timely research. No, titingnan natin yung kanyang statement of faith. Statement of the problem. Yan. Of course, acknowledging Mr. Ortega, he's the advisor. Yan, yung kanyang hindi kasi siya naka-thumbnail, kaya I need to scroll down. The problem. Yan, so we could have a reading on that, but I'm more concerned on the sooner or later we will go back to theoretical framework. Later na yan, no? But I'll more on yan, so these are the theoretical framework and the conceptual framework. Theoretical framework is the theories na kung saan this will be the one that will support your research, the theories behind. And then the conceptual is how you gather the information. So your conceptual framework. Conceptual framework. Now, ito yung gusto nating makita doon sa instrument. In your instrument, there should be a reflection as far as the statement of the problem is concerned. So, the study mainly attempts to identify factors affecting academic performance in mathematics of BSED math students of PUP Taguig during the COVID-19. Specifically, this study sought to answer what is the demographic profile of the respondents. No? So, first and foremost, we need to know our sample, no? Our respondents in terms of their demographic profile. Since this is primarily a descriptive research, so importante yung some demographic profiles of the respondents in terms of sex, age, chosen mode of learning. So we have some mode of learning like online, which is basically the synchronous, asynchronous, or the mix, or perhaps modular. No, there are, but based on this research, meron siyang mga binanggit. Chosen mode of learning and academic performance of learners in distance learning modality. So meron siyang mga test, perhaps standardized test na ginanap o tiningnan as far as the academic performance. And this need to be standardized, no? How are the factors affecting performance? No, how? What we said, math students in terms of the following be described: devices being used. So there are devices that are used as far as the learning, the academic performance concerned, internet connectivity. There's also aspect of technical knowledge and also the learning environment. Then, are the factors affecting the said math student academic performance based on their degree of agreement. So there's a degree of agreement. So later on, makikita natin siya. Siguro, ipagpaparallel ko yung dalawa. It's better to have a... Kasi kailangan makita dito yung parallelism. Yung instrument mo talaga, sinusukat yung gusto mong malaman. Perhaps I could have another viewer from here. Okay, so tingnan ko lang yung ano. Teka, nawala yung research instrument. Dali lang guys. Wait lang. Double pala to. Teka, wait. Double viewing pala kaya hindi ko makita. So guys, dapat pag gagawa tayo ng research, magkatugma yung statement of the problem saka yung research instrument. So here, number 1, what demographic profile of the respondents? No? So, of course, nakikita natin yung demographic profile. No? Name is optional here. Age, check. Then the sex, male, female. No? So, wala namang iba. Male and female lang yan. And then chosen mode of learning. So, in-include niya rin yung year and section. Yan. And then we have the academic performance. In terms of the average na pala for that SEM. Yun ang kinuha. The average, the weighted, general weighted average for the first semester. So yun yung parang parameter niya doon. So yan, academic performance yan for the semester. Alright. And then you have your chosen mode of learning. So nakikita nyo guys, kung ano yung nandito sa statement of the problem, dapat yun yung swak na instrument. Okay, lalo na Dale, are you listening if you're not around? So dapat swak yung instrument doon sa mismo sinusukat mo, nais mo na sukatin. No, katulad dito sa statement of the problem, so kitang-kita. So, yan. So, part 2, ayan. What are the factors affecting the academic performance of the said math students in terms of the following described device being used? Yan, meron siyang mga criteria dito. So, gumamit lang siya ng 1 to 4 na scale, Likert scale, Likert scale, no, 1 to 4. No? So yun yung mga description. So, I lack resources such as laptop, no? So, etc. So, yan yung mga checklist natin. Pasok yung being used. And then, internet connectivity. Teka, nawala yung internet connectivity. Ayun, internet connectivity. Yan. Internet connectivity and then technical knowledge. And then we have learning environment. Yan. So, of course, saan na nakuha yung mga questionnaires niyan? Doon sa readings. Kaya importante yung backup readings natin, mga kapatid. Dahil na Dale, if you're listening right now, dapat yung readings mo makakatulong doon sa paglaman nung iyong sariling instrument. If it will not be adapt, you need to have a research-based instrument. Perhaps triangulated with the expert or the validity in terms expert validity. Pwede natin makuha yung expert opinion as far as the validity. No? Meaning, it's valid in the sense that it answers or it measures the variable that needs to be measured. No? Katulad nito, one-to-one correspondence to. And then number 3, factors affecting the said student, math major, based on the agreements. So, factors affecting, no? So, siguro nandyan din yan sa instrument na yan. Accessing course content o device use, ayan. So, inalam din natin yung eksaktong device na ginagamit nila, online platforms used. Ayan. So, other questions here, which among the platform, all right. Yan. So, is there significant difference between the factors affecting the performance of the said math majors when grouped according to demographical profile? All right. So, ito na yung mga makikita natin na hypothesis testing na to, significant difference. Ito, pagdating din sa number 3. So, I suppose lahat naman na nasagot, no, yung 1, 2, 3 had been answered by this. Then we will further analyze the data so that we may look into the testing of hypothesis. Yung number 4 yung sagot, ano dun test my hypothesis, no? What technological device used in respondents? What are the respondents' frequent internet speed? Okay, so these are already descriptive questions. What online platform used by students in their mathematics subject during the SEM? So yan na yung mga ibang mga. So ito na hypothesis. Factors are not affecting BSED math student in their academic performance on their degree of agreement. Or there is no difference, no? Yan yung hypothesis 1. There's no significant difference between the factors affecting the academic performance of the said math major when grouped according to demographical profile. So yung 4. So the factors are not affecting. So ito naman lalabas yan doon sa presentation of data, lahat ng result. Okay, so ang point natin dito, may correspondence yung ating ginagamit na instrument doon sa statement of the problem. Ito na yung mga specifics ng iyong problem na gagamitin. Okay? Yan. So, okay. So, balik tayo dun sa ating lecture. Okay, so we're jumping now into another aspect, which is research designs. So yan, yung mga research design. Acknowledging 2 top chats on our YouTube. Salamat po. Alright. So yung research design natin. Yan, mamaya ka na Google. So of course, descriptive research is predominantly used in education and even in social science, meaning to describe the population based on the sample. Now we could describe the population, its behavior. So that is more descriptive in terms of description, describing the population in terms of the sample size where you get the information. So descriptive research. Yan. It's defined as a purposive process of gathering, analyzing, classifying, tabulating data about prevailing condition, practices, belief, processes, trends, and cause and effect relation, and then making adequate, accurate interpretation about such data with statistical methods. So description, describing the population. So that's the keyword for descriptive research. All right. Then we have what are those research designs that we could implement as far as descriptive research is concerned. So you have your case studies. Now we could study different cases, scenarios, or survey in terms of giving out our research instruments, surveys, developmental studies. No? So we could also do that. And we could make use of assessment and evaluation studies as well. So in terms of evaluating perhaps curriculum or a project, etc. Then comparative studies, no, there are comparisons of 2 prevailing systems, no, which is more probably to be implemented among these 2 or 3 systems being compared. Then of course correlation studies, no, in terms of relations of one variable to another. That could be a correlation study. Tracer studies, normally this is done on the alumna of a college. We need to trace them, track them down, what are their progress, no? So in yung tracer study, normally within 5 to 10 years of or even more, no, as much possible, no, para makakuha ka talaga ng trending doon. Trends and projection studies as well. Post facto research as well. Documentary analysis, no, based yan, yung mga documents, we could analyze that as well. So these are descriptive research. Now, so we'll have a summary of each of these research, no, but let's see if we could have a detailed discussion of each one. Case study is a type of detailed and in-depth research involving few respondents ranging from 1 to a small size less than 10 over a considerable period of time. So that's detailed in-depth research of this small group case studies. A study of autistic patients perhaps in health sciences, you could make use of this, their behavior in the duration of time, perhaps doing some reinforcements. So yan yung ating makikita dyan. So for case study, and then of course the most of the time this is a more practical survey research. Survey research used to gather relatively limited data from a relatively large number of cases. Yan. Purpose to gather information about the prevailing condition or about the variables under study. So normally, yan ang ginagamit natin. Stresses and coping strategies for spinal cord. So these are more health sciences. I got this from a health science research book. But that could be applied generally in education. So there are types of research. For instance, total population survey. We call it census. No? So this is involvement of all of the population. Census yan. Or it could be sample survey as well as part of a population. Then we could just compute for whatever desired reliability you may have, or percent error, I would say, as far as sample size is concerned. So, and then you have the social survey. Ito yung mga lumalabas na yung social survey na yan yung mga lumalabas na mga pre-election surveys natin ngayon. No? And then school survey, that could be done in the school campus during the time of pre-pandemic. Then of course, public opinion survey. Dito madalas ang mga fake news. Minsan yung public opinion na tinanong, hindi yan yung pulso ng buong komunidad. No? Yung pala ay very specific lang. Yung public opinion survey. Then poll survey. No? So it could be pre-poll or post-poll survey, lalo na pag may mga eleksyon. Market survey. Yan. So these are types of survey. Comparative, longitudinal, so you could Google that if you want, cross-sectional, etc. There are more here, so but we may not the correlation survey as well. Okay, so it is used for developmental study. It is used when one desires reliable information about a group of people over a period of time. So development, longitudinal, studying the sample of participants over an extended period of time. A study, nabanggit na itong autistic children from age 1 to 5. Cross-sectional, studying participants of various age level and of other characteristics at the same period of time. Yan, study on the development of babies from birth to 5 years, afflicted with Down syndrome using subjects from all age levels at the same time. Yan, yung ating cross-section. Then we have assessment or evaluation studies. Refers to the study on efficiency or effectiveness of policy. No? So we need to assess its effectivity or efficiency of a policy, instrument, or variables that may be considered. Yan, factors influencing the compliance and non-compliance of mothers to the maternal and child healthcare program of DOH. No? So another case issue there. No? So that's for assessment and evaluation studies. Now also, comparative study comparing the result in the difference in a certain characteristic according to the variable considered. The effectiveness of pineapple juice in an aid in lowering blood pressure. Comparative study. Correlation study. Of course, there are at least two variables. Explores the relationship between two or more variables, independent or dependent, and dependent as well. Okay, correlation studies. One variable X, another variable Y. Child maturation and poverty indices in the city of Malolos, perspective developing intervention programs. So malnutrition and poverty index. So yung may correlation yung poverty index doon sa child malnutrition. Research study, one wants to follow up developing certain condition of particular sets of people, mostly the alumni, the graduates, employability and productivity of PLM, physical therapy graduates from school year. So it's a matter of 5 years or even 10 years. Some may have 15 years of research study. The trends and projection used for projects that are forward-looking. Feasibility studies, no? So yan yun, no? Etc. So more on this. So yan isa pang I won't discuss this anymore kasi more on more on health sciences. Documentary analysis involves the gathering information by analyzing written records and documents to solve a problem. So documentary analysis. Secondary data ang ginagamit yan. So for your experimental research design, future-oriented, what would be? The most prestigious, sophisticated method. Talagang yan yung sophisticated. Kaya normally, hindi natin ginagamit yan. Cause and effect, yes. It's a never hypothesis free. Yan. So, siyempre, control group versus experimental group. Yun yung mga parameters niya. Of course, siguro I will skip on this experimentation. So, hindi na siya, kasi more on descriptive research lang tayo. Yan, so, titingnan natin yung iba pang portion nito. So far kasi, parang na-discuss na natin eh. So, sana kung nandito si Dave, ituturo ko yung iba't ibang mga contents ng chapter 1 based on the criteria. So, i-analyze na natin siya. Though wala ngayon yung estudyante natin. So, nagpaalam naman siya, kaya lang, yun, sayang. As much as possible ay so, I will not be dealing much with experimental. Though, maganda rin to, no? Yung mga experimental na yan. Normally, ginagamit natin siya sa mga health sciences, agriculture, biological, no? Yung mga research na yan. So, hindi na natin siya. Ayan, another part of, we could also distinguish the quantitative from the qualitative research, no? So we have the phenomenological studies, ethnographic, grounded theory, historical, case studies, action research. So these are qualitative. Alright, so tingnan ko. So siguro I could just jump here from the sampling methods. Anyway, this had been uploaded to the classroom, so they could always get this file. Yung ating, not so sure if this part of the, yes, this is the supplementary lecture under methods of research. So, nandyan lang yan, yung PDF file niya. Yan. So, for the sampling method, tingin ko mas importante kay Dale to dahil descriptive ang research niya. So, this is more of a descriptive research. Yan. So, yung population versus sample. Population composed of the entire group of people or objects to which the researcher wishes to generalize the findings of the study. Of course, the subset of that population is sample. No? Normally, we use Slobins, but there are other statistical formula for that. So in terms of our sampling procedure, there are what we call probability sampling. How we get our sample involves the use of random selection process to select a sample from members elements of population. You don't need a sampling technique if you will survey the entire population. No need for sampling technique. Alright, kasi kung yung population. No? So goal to examine the representative elements of the population. No, probability sampling. So random selection of sample from members or elements of the population. It could be simple random, stratified cluster, or systematic. Or perhaps non-probability sampling. Elements are chosen from population by non-random methods such as convenience, out of convenience, kung sino lang yung malapit, or snowball, or network, or quota, or purposive. So these are samples of non-probability sampling. Okay, if the population is 400, the adopted degree of error, which is 0.05 or alpha, is 5%. What would be the sample size? Utilizing the Slobin's formula, so this would be, pasensya na kayo, maliit lang yung, hindi ko alam ba't maliit to eh. So N would be equal to N all over 1 plus n alpha squared. So that's what we call Slovin's formula. Computing, okay, substituting. So number of participants. For you to have a 5% degree of error, you need to have half of the population. Yan. Acknowledging, Ma'am Ilocanang Inday. Madam, welcome po. Thank you for dropping by, Madam. Welcome. Yan. Salamat, Madam. Yan, medyo busy tayo ngayon kaya hindi ako makapag-bisita sa iyong live stream. See you na lang, Madam, sa Thursday sa inyong team night. So, I'll be there in your team night. Yan. Madam, gets nyo na to. Method research ngayon ng aking topic. Ayan, Slovin's formula. Yun ang bakit yung font style ko biglang lumiit dito eh. Nasubukan ko naman siya sa ibang screen. Okay, so you need to get half of the population if you will have a 0.05 degree of error. So based on the Slovin's formula. Okay? So yun yung makikita natin doon. Okay, so in terms of the probability random sampling or probability sampling, you could make use of simple random, assign a number to each member population, then select the sample through the table of random numbers. Ayan, so pwede tayo meron tayong mga available random numbers, table of random numbers, or you could generate random numbers through your calculator. Normally, your calculator has random generator. Random number generator. 3-digit yun. Okay. May nakalagay dyan na RAN. Random yun. Random na. Pag sinip mo yun, mag-generate siya ng 3-digit number. So, or, a more scientific perhaps is the random table or random number. Table of random numbers. Okay? Another type of probability sampling would be stratified. Stratified random sampling. Divide the population into subgroups or strata. So, subgroups, yung population, and then a simple random sample is taken from each of the subgroup. Kaya stratified siya kasi strata. Sa halip na yung kabuuan, yung rinando mo, dinivide mo pa siya into subgroup. Then, nagkaroon ka ng stratified random sampling. Cluster group rather than the people are selected. Random selection from the cluster. So instead of the people, we select groups, and then yun ira-random number natin yung groups, and then random selection per cluster. And then systematic, obtain listing of population, determine the sample size. Then, select every kth element. So, systematic. Halimbawa, for every 5, pipili ka ng sample every 5. 5, 10, 15, 20. So, lahat ng sa listahan, halimbawa, ng alphabetical ng sample, ay ng population, yung 5, 10, 15, 20. So, multiples of 5 perhaps. So, that could be what we call systematic random probability. No, the kth element. Yan. Pagdating naman sa non-probability, convenience, accidental or incidental involves the readiness of the sample or available people or object for the study. Snowball involves assistance of subject to help obtain the potential subjects. So yung mga network, no, snowball yun. And then quota, establishment of desired quota or proportion for some variable of interest. So, quota, depende. Bahala na kung saan mo kunin, pero may ma-achieve ka lang number of proportion for some variable. And then, purposive, subjects are chosen that the researcher believes a typical representative of accessible population. Yan, representative, purposive siya. Or accessible population. Yan. Okay, so I think that could be it, no? Because next thing is APA format. Saka ako na i-discuss to pag nandito na si Dave. Okay? So it's just a short study Ayan. Then, later on, I'll be meeting my problem-solving class. So I think, I'm not so sure if my midterm is, my prelim exam is ready, but probably by tomorrow or so. Okay, so tingin ko hanggang dito lang muna tayo. Though gusto ko talagang makausap si Dale anong status ng kanyang research, no. So yun talaga yung diyan umiinit yung discussion, and perhaps ayan, so makapag-submit siya ng draft ng chapter 2 and then eventually chapter 1, 2, 3 na. Ayan, 1, 2, 3. Alright. Sige, so we thank the Lord for this, no. I hope yung ating mga taga-subaybay ay nalito sa aking lecture. But of course, it's dedicated to my student. My student already have read a research reference, and this is more of a reinforcement. Kaya ganito, medyo mabilis yung ating discussion. Okay? Sige. So we thank the Lord for this. Let's close in a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. Thank you for this opportunity that we could continue on our discussion, even on this short lecture regarding some aspects of research, even the research instrument, and how the sampling techniques used, and other things, Lord, that will be beneficial for Dale's research proposal. May you continually guide him, even as he has some ministerial activities today. I pray for your mercy and grace. We thank you, Lord, and continually guide us throughout the week. It's our prayer in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, salamat sa inyo. Also acknowledging G Lalab 21. Salamat sa iyo sa pag-thumbs up. Okay, later on, I will be broadcasting around 1 o'clock. Ayan, around 1 o'clock. So, tama, 1 o'clock na. Alright, this is now regarding problem solving. We will continue our discussion regarding differential and integral calculus computation using Octave. Yeah. So, see you around, guys.